Okay.
Hello, Dan. Can you
Hello.
please introduce yourself?
So my name's Daniel Patrick Cohen, and I am a composer specializing in film music, especially independent film. And I am here in Kiev to talk about the score I did for Alfred Hitchcock's The Pleasure Garden, which is his first film, and also to introduce a new film called Karmaloka, which is by a British filmmaker called Samir Gessus. I had like a contemporary music training. I decided at about 17, 18, while watching Hitchcock films, that I wanted to do film music. My teacher from music college, I was talking to him 24/7 about Hitchcock, and he knew how much I loved Hitchcock and whatever. Got very, very lucky, right place at the right time, and got this commission to do the soundtrack for Hitchcock's first film. The thing about the Hitchcock project and scoring any kind of archive footage is you are now the number one artist. You can pretend that it's not the case and pretend that you're kind of having a conversation with Hitchcock and stuff, but actually it's the case that you are now the artist. You're the person with kind of final decision on everything. Working with silent film kind of generally, you have complete ownership of the entirety of the soundtrack. And that's a unique thing, because actually you can put into your score, you can have sound effects, you can even almost have bits of dialogue, you've got all this wonderful creative thing, because suddenly you're responsible for the entire oral package. And then working in independent film is completely different. You have to take a secondary role. I feel that real art has to have one person at the top making decisions. The opposite of this is, I think, a kind of a Hollywood model where you have the director, but then the director is responding to 5 or 6 producers and listening to this awful thing called a focus group, where they play the film to the public. I've gone and done this. You go and watch a film before it's been released and give your thoughts. And then the director's got to listen to what the public says and change it, and soften it up and stuff. And I think that's all just rubbish. That's taking away from freedom of speech, and it's taking away from what artistry actually is. There's a Stravinsky thing. I've never found any evidence that he said this, but a teacher of mine told me that he said this, so I believe it, right? But he said that when you have no external creative limitations, as we found when you have freedom of speech and all these kind of progressions in the 20th century, increasingly you don't have stylistic limitations imposed upon you. And I mean that from like the government or from people paying for the music. Of course, for hundreds of years, classical musicians were always writing for a rich person. And they always have to have half their mind on what this person is going to like. Now in the 20th century, growing numbers of people are finding that they can do stuff without having to answer to any limitations. Now, Stravinsky said that when you have this absence of limitations, the first step of the creative process is to impose some limitations upon yourself, to create like a box for you to start to work in. And I think that's quite cool with film music, because in a sense, as I was describing, film music, you are limiting yourself, because you have to have this eye on what the director is going to like. This is very important in terms of what art is, I think.